please join me in welcoming Tony Hsieh. Welcome.
So I actually didn't get to see the show of hands. How many of you have actually bought from Zappos before? It's very cool. So what I usually find when I ask that question is that most women have heard of Zappos and most men have heard of Zappos but not actually bought from us before. And we were giving a tour once to the head of a major record label company, and he had heard of Zappos, never bought from us, but he had this sneaking suspicion that his wife was maybe buying a lot because boxes would show up, but anytime he asked his wife how much she was spending with Zappos, she refused to tell him. And so during the tour, he actually sat down next to one of our customer loyalty reps, that's our name for our call center reps, and looked up her account and found that she had spent over $62,000. So I hope we weren't instrumental in any kind of divorce there. So wanted to talk first about what led me to Zappos. And the story actually starts with pizza. I was running a pizza business in college with my college roommate. And every night, this guy named Alfred would stop by and order a large pizza from us. And Alfred today is actually the CFO and COO of Zappos. And we used to call him the human trash compactor, because in college, whenever we went to dinners, he would just finish everyone's leftovers. So it really wasn't that surprising that he would buy pizza every night. But then sometimes a few hours later, he'd come by and buy another large pizza and use his frequent pizza diner's card. Well, I found out several years later he was taking them upstairs and selling them off by the slice to his rooming group. So that's why he's our CFO and COO today. So after college, I started a company called Link Exchange with the same college roommate that I was running the pizza business with. And over about 2.5 years, we grew the company to about 100 employees and then ended up selling it off to Microsoft in 1998 for $265 million. And by coincidence, someone just sent me an email today reminding me that actually today is actually the 10-year anniversary of that sale. After that happened, Alfred and I formed a small investment fund, and we invested in about 20 or so different internet companies, and Zappos just happened to be one of them. And my original involvement was just as an investor and advisor. But over the course of the next 12 months, it became clear that Zappos was the most fun and the most promising, so I eventually ended up joining full-time. So most people externally know or think of Zappos as an online footwear retailer. Right now, we have about 1,600 employees, but internally, we actually think of the Zappos brand and vision of where we're going pretty differently. We actually hope that 10 years from now, people won't even realize that we started out selling footwear online. And we really just want the Zappos brand to be about the very best customer service, the very best customer experience. We've actually expanded beyond footwear. We now sell clothing and handbags and even electronics and cookware. But it's not even limited to e-commerce. We've had customers actually email us and ask us, will we please start an airline or run the IRS? And we're not planning on doing either of those things this year, but 30 years from now, I wouldn't rule out a Zappos Airlines that's just about the very best customer service and very best customer experience. And one brand that we look to for inspiration is Virgin, where Virgin is involved in a lot of different businesses. They do music and airlines and a whole bunch of other things. But the difference is Virgin is more about being hip and cool, and we just want the Zappos brand to be about the very best customer service and experience. So we have about 9 million customers right now. Roughly 3% of the US population has bought from us. And we really focus on repeat customers. On any given day, about 75% of our orders come from repeat customers. We find that they spend more and they come back more frequently. And over the past 9.5 years, we've grown from nothing to this year, we'll do about $1 billion in gross merchandise sales. And the number one driver of that growth has been from repeat customers and word of mouth. And so for us, we invest a lot into the customer experience. Things like the free shipping both ways and doing surprise upgrades where customers are expecting their package in a week and then we surprise upgrade them to overnight. A lot of customers actually order as late as midnight Eastern, and then we surprise upgrade them, and then the shoes show up on their doorstep 8 hours later. And that just really creates the wow experience and generates that word of mouth. So all this investment into the customer experience we view as our true form of marketing. Unlike most websites where it's hard to find contact information, we actually put our 1-800 number at the top of every single page of our website because we actually want to talk to our customers. And sometimes I'll speak at advertising or marketing conferences where they're talking about consumers being bombarded with so many marketing messages, thousands of marketing messages every day. How do you make yours stand out? Well, as kind of low-tech and unsexy as it may sound, we think the telephone is one of the best branding devices out there. You have the customer's undivided attention for 5 to 10 minutes, and that's an interaction that they're going to remember for the rest of their life if you do it well. And for us, we don't have scripts. We don't measure average call times. We don't view the phone calls that come in as an expense to minimize. We view that as our best branding opportunity. I'm going to skip through some of the other things. I'll make this presentation available, but what I really want to spend more time talking about is our number one priority as a company, and it's actually not customer service. Our number one priority as a company is company culture. Our whole belief is that if we get the culture right, most of the other stuff, like great customer service, will just happen naturally on its own. And there's a couple reasons that we focus on culture. First reason is actually from my personal experience when we sold the company at Link Exchange. One of the big driving factors of why we ended up selling the company was because it went from this really fun company when it was 5 or 10 people to when it was 100 people. It was a place that I personally didn't want to go to work at anymore. And that was kind of a weird feeling because this was a company I had co-founded. And so with Zappos, wanted to make sure we didn't make the same mistake again for both myself personally, and also we want all of our employees to actually look forward to coming into the office. The second reason is with the web making every company become more and more transparent, whether they like it or not, just because there could be a disgruntled employee or a customer that writes up something and instantly 1 million people can read about it if it's a really bad experience or a really good experience. Our belief is that your company's culture and your company's brand are really just two sides of the same coin. Like your brand will lag your culture, but eventually it will catch up. And I think that's why a lot of companies that have been around for a long time and are large corporations are struggling right now because consumers can see through that they might be trying to project this brand just the same way they used to 50 years ago by buying lots of TV ads, but consumers can sense that that's not genuine or authentic. So we do a lot of things to really protect our culture and actually make sure that not only does our culture not go downhill as we grow, but actually gets stronger and stronger and actually scales. When we hire people, we actually do 2 sets of interviews. The first set of interviews is kind of the standard with the hiring manager, his or her team interviewing for technical ability, experience, and so on. But then our HR department does a separate set of interviews purely for culture fit. And they have to pass both in order to be hired. So we've actually passed on a lot of really talented people that we know can make an immediate impact on the top or bottom line. But if we think they'll be bad for our culture and won't fit into our culture, we actually won't hire that person. And then everyone that's hired in our headquarters in Las Vegas goes through the same 4 weeks of training that our call center reps go through. And that includes going over company history, importance of company culture and customer service, and actually taking calls for 2 weeks on the phone, talking with customers. It doesn't matter what your position is. You can be an accountant or a lawyer or a software developer. You go through that. And during that process, we actually offer everyone at the end of the first week $2,000 to leave the company, plus paying them for the time they've worked there. And that's actually a standing offer until the end of the 4 weeks. And what we found is right now, the number of people that take it, it's pretty small. It's 2 or 3%. But it really gets people that want to be with the company and committed to the company because they have to realize that they can make an easy $2,000, and there's plenty of other call centers in Las Vegas that they could also work at. We have something called a culture book, and this is something that I'll have information for how to get one from. We're happy to send you one for free. But this is something that we put out once a year, and we ask all our employees to write a few paragraphs about what the Zappos culture means to them. And except for typos, it's unedited. So it's kind of like customer reviews on websites. You get to read both the good and the bad, and it's organized by categories, so you can actually see, by department, so you can actually see how the merchandising culture might be slightly different from the warehouse culture, for example. And we also fire people if they're not good for the culture. And our performance reviews are 50% based on company culture and how they contribute to the company culture. So, So a lot of people ask, well, how do you define culture? And for us, we came up with a list of 10 core values. And the key word here, though, is committable core values. You know, a lot of companies, big corporations, they might call them core values or guiding principles, but it ends up being something that is a plaque on the wall in the lobby, and maybe you learn about it in day one of orientation, but then no one really pays attention to them. And by committable, it means that you're willing to hire and fire based on it. So it's actually not that easy to come up with a list of 10 core values. These are the 10 core values for Zappos. And a lot of people, when they tour our offices and see our culture, say, oh, this is great, but this would never work at my company. And we're not saying, oh, your core values need to be the same as Zappos, or your culture needs to be the same as Zappos. I think the most important thing is that you need to have a strong culture. It really doesn't matter what it is. But having a strong culture really gets everyone aligned and gets everyone thinking very similarly. And the companies that do the best in the long term are the ones that have the strongest culture. And so I'll end with a pizza story, which is I was speaking at a Skechers conference about a year ago or so, and it was their sales conference. Skechers is one of the brands that we work with. And there were 3 people from Skechers at the end of the night when the conference was over, and 3 people from Zappos, and we decided to go bar hopping. Well, we probably hopped one too many bars that night, and then all wound up back at someone's hotel room, and one of the Skechers people really, really wanted a pizza. And so they tried calling room service, and unfortunately by then it was 2:30 in the morning, and room service doesn't deliver hot food after 11 p.m. So us Zappos people started joking around and say, call Zappos, call Zappos. We give great customer service. And to us, we thought it was the funniest thing at the time in our post-bar hopping state. And so the Skechers person actually called Zappos, put it on speakerphone, and the rep that answered said, thanks for calling Zappos, how can I help you? And the person from Skechers said, you know what, I'm in Santa Monica, in this hotel room, they won't deliver hot food after 11 p.m., and I really, really want a pizza. And then there was a bit of an awkward silence after that. And the rep said, well, you know you called Zappos, right? We sell shoes and clothing. And she said, yeah, but I'm really hungry, and I really want a pizza. And so the rep said, hold on, and came back 2 minutes later, listing the 5 closest places in Santa Monica that were still open delivering pizza at that hour. And that I like to, well, I hesitate a little bit to tell this story because I don't want all of you to start calling Zappos and ordering pizzas. But I like telling that story because it's a fun way to illustrate, really the concept that if you get the culture right and make sure everyone understands the vision of where your company is going, most of the other stuff will just happen naturally on its own, like great customer service or dealing with weird situations like drunk people calling for pizza. And we have a lot of stories like that, and it's not just about our customer loyalty team. We have stories in our warehouse where people accidentally return stuff, and maybe they returned a wallet and accidentally left $150 in it. In most places, if you don't care about who you're hiring in the warehouse, you don't look for culture fit, then the warehouse worker would probably steal the money. But in our case, we don't have extra security there. The warehouse workers that we have that are working close to minimum wage end up doing the right thing and contacting the customer and writing letters to the customer And those customers tell those stories about how they were amazed they received a letter from a warehouse worker thanking them and returning the money. And those are the types of stories that we create thousands and thousands of times every single day. And we don't have scripts. We don't have a lot of processes and procedures. Our whole approach and belief is that if we get the culture right, then the customer service and building your brand will just happen naturally on its own. So if you want to email me, tony@zappos.com for a copy of this presentation, any additional questions, because I don't think we have time for Q&A. A copy of the culture book, but the culture book is a physical book, so I need your physical mailing address if you would like a copy of that. We also give tours of our offices all the time. We've had companies like Southwest Airlines or Lego come in, and we're happy to give a tour. A normal tour lasts anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. And it's one thing for me to talk about the culture, but it's not really until you come and tour our offices that you can really feel and understand the value that the culture brings. And then we also have companies that come and spend an entire day, and they might send 5 people to come and spend 2 hours with our call center, 2 hours with HR, 2 hours of training, and so on. And we're happy to do that as well. And we're hiring. We're on Twitter. Here's some things to check out. And thank you very much.